Bingo, 4 o'clock rock. Hawaii, the state of clean energy. Special show today about fuels. We're taking stock of alternative fuels with Joelle Simonpietri, Mitch Ewan, and Kelly King. Joelle is from HNEI. Am I right? You get that right?
University of Hawaii.
Okay, University of Hawaii. And Mitch is definitely from HNEI. I know that because he was talking about it a minute ago.
That's correct.
And Kelly King from Pacific Biodiesel. And Kelly, hi Kelly. Kelly joins us by Skype from Maui, where she lives.
Actually, Jay, I'm on the Big Island this week.
Okay, from the Big Island, where she lives a lot of the time these days. Yeah, truly an outer island person, neighbor island person. Okay, we're going to talk about alternative fuels today. We've got a lot to talk about, but let's talk about the current events first. So we have the Verge conference coming up. What is it? When is it? What's it about? And Kelly, you mentioned before the show that there's a deadline in April. So why don't you present, Joelle?
Sure. So Verge 2016 is actually the State Energy Office's going to be annual energy conference. It used to be the Asia Pacific Clean Energy Summit and Expo in August, September each year for the past 6 years or so. And it's moving to June. It's going to be put on by GreenBiz out of Oakland, California. And they're bringing kind of their Verge and Accelerate platforms to the state of Hawaii for a Hawaii-focused event. June 21st, 22nd, 23rd, I think.
Convention Center.
Yeah. No, actually at the Hilton Hawaiian Village.
Okay.
And so pertinent to transportation and fuels, University of Hawaii Applied Research Lab, where I will start working on Friday.
Is that a congratulations
on April
thing?
Fool's Day. Yes, on April Fool's Day.
Congratulations, Joelle.
Thank you. And so we're going to be partnering up with GreenBiz to actually put on a 4-hour renewable transportation fuel summit in conjunction
within the Verge.
In the Verge
conference.
It's already on the program and it's up online, and we're going to try and have a fairly high-level conversation about a Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative, the state of Hawaii's goals. They're very well defined for electricity and not as well defined for transportation.
That's what we're really talking about. Yeah. And Kelly, you had a point about a deadline in April relating to the Verge conference. What is that now?
Well, I was just reading it on my email today that it was for Accelerate applications. And Joelle probably knows more about what that means than I do. But one of the things I wanted to point out too is that I was told that the reason why they moved the formerly Asia Pacific Clean Energy Summit up to June is so it's not to conflict with the IUCN, which is the International Union of Conservationists. And this is
that's the World Conservation Congress in September.
Yeah. It's like the Olympics of conservationism, and it's never come to the United States before. This will be the first time. They hold it every 4 years, just like the Olympics. We're expecting in the state 8,000 delegates for the week, the 10 days, September 1st through the 10th, and all their families and peripheral colleagues and all that. So it's going to be quite a large statewide event. All the neighbor islands are planning events either before or after. Maui is planning a week-long festival right before that. And so there'll be things like alternative fuels and renewable energy highlighted, like indigenous agriculture, Native American plants and food crops, and those kinds of things. So it's going to be, I think that's going to be a really interesting opportunity.
Major, yeah. And indeed, our show right after this show today features Judge Antonio Benjamin, who is one of the judges on the Supreme Court, the Supreme Federal Court of Brazil, who is a big player in the World Conservation Congress. So he's ramping up. That's why he's here.
Right.
So see, it's already happening. Okay, and then we were also going to talk a little bit about Rimpac.
Sure.
Okay, can you present on that, Joelle?
Sure. So
don't worry, Mitch. We're going to get to you in a little while. You can run, but you can't hide. Yeah.
No worries.
So Rimpac, Rim of the Pacific exercise, is actually the largest naval exercise in the world, and there's over 26 countries participating every year. It's held every 2 years here in Hawaii.
What does it stand for anyway?
Rim of the Pacific, Rimpac.
Okay.
So Rimpac 2012, two exercises ago, had the distinction of being the very first Great Green Fleet event for the Navy. And so, actually, I think I left them on the couch in there. So the Navy actually purchased, through Defense Logistics Agency for Energy, actually purchased renewable jet fuel and marine diesel, sort of a test runs, test lots, and actually shipped them out here for Hawaii for that exercise. Like Chris Tyndall, the Director for Operational Energy for the Navy, likes to say, you know, the news that happened was that nothing happened. No planes fell out of the sky. The boats didn't stop
Everything
sailing.
worked fine.
The fuel worked absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And if we didn't have media events and a bunch of rah-rah, it's not like it's green fumes coming out of the back of an F-word, you know.
Now that would have been something.
So the news is that nothing happened. So this next one, this summer, is actually the final event. And what's going to be new about this one is it's actually going to be commercially procured renewable fuel. So specifically marine diesel, manufactured in California by Altair Corporation, using waste fats and greases, just like Kelly's company does on the Big Island with Big Island Biodiesel, is actually making drop-in marine diesel. It's actually on its way out here right now in an oiler to be here in time for the exercise.
So interesting. You got to hand it to the Navy to do this.
The most newsworthy part, $1.98 a gallon. It was at commercial price, actually bid against regular petroleum suppliers.
What's their secret?
Completely price parity. Well, the secret is a really good business partnering agreement. They partnered up with, I think, Baker Commodities. Kelly might actually know better than me. So basically, they partnered up with a rendering company that operates on the West Coast for low-cost feedstock, and then partnered up with Honeywell UOP to bring a mothballed refinery out of mothballs, and that refinery actually now operates 100% renewable refining. It's making renewable jet, renewable diesel, renewable gasoline, and renewable marine diesel.
What's the name of it? Where is it?
I think it's in Bakersfield, California, but
good for the Navy.
Don't quote me on that.
Okay, good for them.
It's in the Los Angeles area.
And it's great to have a renewable refinery out of the mothballs. So Kelly, what do you know about this biofuel that, what is it, Altair Corporation is making? Is it as good as yours?
I don't really know. I do know Baker Commodities because we deal with their subsidiary Island Commodities over here, who also collects used cooking oil, waste oil. I do know that the prices are considerably low all throughout the biofuel industry, especially on the West Coast, a lot lower than in Hawaii because they have to compete with much lower petroleum prices. It doesn't necessarily mean that anybody's making good money because you have to stay in business. You have to meet those price points, and we certainly, our Oregon operation is experiencing the same thing. So, but there are, the FET credit came back, so this is a good year to post those kinds of prices because there's the dollar credit per gallon on top of that, whatever they're charging, and then there's RINs, which are renewable identification numbers that are attached to every gallon of, as long as it's ASTM fuel, biofuel. That you can get on top of that. So that's basically, those two things are what's saving the industry right now.
Yeah.
And we've seen those types of prices in biodiesel throughout the West Coast in the last year as well, just trying to keep heads above water and stay in business.
Yeah.
Not necessarily making any profit, but trying not to lose our shirts.
Well, the big question is whether that, what you call it, a fueler, a tanker, that's coming up, an oiler, it's coming out from the West Coast with all this Rimpac fuel, is operating on renewable fuel, or whether it's operating on the old-fashioned, unmentionable fossil fuel.
I think the blend rate is about 11 to 20%. I'm not sure exactly, but basically the Navy's talking points, and this is actually with all the Navy partners, and that's actually to all the Navies participating in this exercise, is that be ready because we're operating globally on renewable fuels wherever we can get it, starting in 2016, and so it's going to be in our tank. It might be at a smaller proportion than 10%. But if you have any qualms, we've tested it, we've certified it, gone through a 7-8 year process. It's a drop-in replacement. Biodiesel and renewable diesel do have different specifications, so we are talking about kind of some different chemistry. But the Navy's talking points are if you're going to come alongside one of our oilers and refuel like we do all around the globe now, you could be getting renewable fuel. So
And you won't even be able to tell the difference.
and you won't even be able to tell the difference.
And she knows what she's saying because she's actually a commander in the Navy Reserve, spends a lot of time. I know this because I have seen her in uniform. Very nice uniform. Yeah.
But to your point, Jay, I think it is a valid point that the tankers that come back and forth, and even the tankers, the ships that drive our product back and forth are not running on renewable fuel. So that is a kind of a point that we're addressing here in Hawaii. And we're in talks with Young Brothers. It would really be nice to have the tankers that are supplying the Great Green Fleet actually running on some of that fuel as well. But we haven't, we're taking steps. we're taking baby steps to get to some percentage there, and hopefully those folks will come around as well.
We should do a show with Mrs. Glenn Hahn, the CEO of
we are
Young
in
Brothers.
talks with Glenn Hong.
Yeah.
And, they actually have some more ships on order for the next couple of years, and we've been talking to their engineers. But one of the things I really wanted to mention that's pertinent to this point is that Pacific Biodiesel has gotten to the point now where we're doing enough shipment, we're up to 5.5 million gallons a year capacity in the state. And now we've got this big HECO contract that's 3 million gallons a year, plus, it allows for extra fuel. So there are quite a few tankers that are being driven around and shipped around. And we're now at the point where we have started to influence some of the trucking companies that work for us to run on B20. We're taking bids for trucking for our product running back and forth and our feedstock, and we're giving preference, as a company, we're giving preference to those companies that choose to run on B20. Mm-hmm. So we've been able to use that clout, and this is what this is a great thing about having the Navy and the military involved in biofuels, is they can use their clout to start to influence some of the users who might have some issues with it, like Joelle was just indicating. And we saw this with the Arizona Memorial shuttles that, they balked at biodiesel, and the Navy said, well, then we'll look at other engines. And Cummins came around and said, well, never mind, ours will run on biodiesel. But it's going to take that type of clout to...
What about Rimpac for you, Kelly? Would you, do you have the capacity? Can you beat the West Coast plus shipping cost?
Well, we could. We actually did testing on the marine fuel with biodiesel, and it met the spec. And we actually got a grant from HRADV to do that testing. It actually met the spec, but the Navy does not want to use biodiesel in its ships. So they've got some other issues and I'm not sure. I'm not technical enough to repeat those back to you. Joelle probably knows what they are. But there's certainly plenty of market on the roads and in generation and standby generation, farm equipment, and all that. We've got plenty of market here.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
you guys?
I can talk to that if you like, but the bottom line, like Kelly said, is true. There's plenty of market for all kinds of biofuels, to include hydrogen. Just in the ground sector. When you get into military equipment, aviation, and marine, things that actually need to leave this latitude, leave the islands, and go somewhere else, then you have to worry about things like a cold pour point, filter plugging. The biodiesel that Pacific Biodiesel makes is very high quality. It's distilled, but it does still actually gel up at colder temperatures.
You think that could be
and that's
fixed?
That's why it's a function of the chemical property. How it's fixed is by hydrotreating it into a renewable diesel, which is what Altair is doing at their refinery.
We're going to take a break in a minute, but before we do take a break, I just want to cover one other conference, which was the Maui Power Conference. So if you were there, raise your hand.
I was there.
Okay, then you got to tell us about it. How did it go? Did they talk about alternative fuels?
They did, not that much. It was more focused on utility, but the Maui panel this year was very interesting, not just because I was on it, but we had 3 different models presented for a potential utility. Well, Miko came out and talked about their model, and then we had the folks from the Big Island who are poised to, if it should become available, purchase the HELCO ability and turn it into a community utility. talk about their model. And then we had the folks from Colorado who are actually doing that by eminent domain in Boulder. And so we were able to hear 3 different presentations, and then 3 of us who were on the panel along with them were able to ask questions and draw out information, kind of represent the community, if you will, on what it means to the community, what the priorities are. And basically what we decided at the end of that panel was that we don't really know it depends on the priorities for the community, the model that you use, and whether it's a price point issue, whether it's focus on clean energy, renewables for the utility, whether it's focused on the economy, which means local revenue that stays in the community. And on Maui, we don't really know that. We have our administration kind of operating in a vacuum, trying to make some decisions and do some investigating.
Well, one thing is important, that every conference ought to have a discussion of alternative fuels, because it's transportation mostly, and we have to address that. We're going to take a break now, 1-minute break, and we'll be back to talk more about Hawaii, the state of clean energy, with Joelle Simonpietri, Mitch Ewan, and Kelly King joining us from Maui, make that big island by Skype. We're talking about alternative fuels today. We'll be right back.
Aloha! Hello, my name is Patrick Bratton. I'm host of Global Connections here at ThinkTech Hawaii. We broadcast live every Thursday at 1 p.m. We bring Hawaii to the world and the world to Hawaii, talking about international events and various things of interest to the audience. Please join me. I look forward to talking with you and having you get to meet some of my guests. Aloha.
Aloha, namaskar, and hello. My name is Anu Hittel, and I host the show called Climate Change Beyond Outrage. We go beyond outrage to find solutions to climate problems facing people, nations, and the world. I hope you will join me here every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. We broadcast live from thinktechhawaii.com. Aloha and bye-bye.
We're back, we're live. We're talking about Hawaii, the state of renewable energy, here at 4 o'clock Rock. Our flagship show, talking about alternative fuels today with Joelle Simonpietri, Mitch Ewan, and Kelly King. So Mitch, let's talk about hydrogen. Let's talk about the car show. I went to the car show. We made a movie of the car show. We love the car show. But we have too many fossil fuel cars at the car show. Somebody ought to get out with a protest outside, Right. We hate fossil fuel. But there was a Mirai there, as there was last year, and there were a lot of new hybrids, by the way, too. Yeah. So, slowly, inexorably, Detroit or whoever is, gradually going that direction. Yeah. So do you feel that hydrogen is moving fast enough for you?
Yeah, it's really picking up, and it's really encouraging to see that the automobile dealers or manufacturers are coming out with their models now. I took a test drive in the Mirai. It was an awesome vehicle. The acceleration was wonderful. It was quiet, great performance. It's a wonderful car. Other companies are coming out with theirs. We're going to see a whole splurge of them in the next 4 years coming out. The issue we have is infrastructure to fuel those cars. Where do you get your hydrogen from? And that's the big gap we have right now. Luckily in Hawaii, we're a small geography. It only takes 2 or 3 or maybe 4 fueling stations to be able to service the island of Oahu.
Why is that range is greater?
Yeah, the range is greater. They can get 300 miles on a fill of hydrogen. It only takes them 5 minutes to fill. I've been successfully fueling those GM Equinox vehicles at the Marine Corps base in a fast fill. We consistently were able to fill those in 4 minutes with no problems at all. We ran it for 9 months. We had no downtime at all associated with any defect with the station. It was totally automatic and automated so that you did not have to have another human being fill the car. The driver
himself. I was going to ask you that.
Driver came in.
That's great.
Filled it. There was nobody else at the station. So
and 5 minutes is about the same that you spend putting gas in your car. So
absolutely.
It's very quick. Yeah.
Depending on the size of the tank.
So I can see a time when we have stations all around like this. I mean, assuming people latch on to hydrogen cars, and it's a combination station. That's what I think. I think entrepreneurs, are you listening? Entrepreneurs should get in to make a combination station. And for a while, it'll have fossil fuel, but it'll also have electric, fast charge, and it'll have hydrogen. Those 3, every station.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So moving on, I mean, on the Big Island, we are working very closely with Nelha. We have a bid out for our site work for a hydrogen station at the Nelha site, where we'll be producing hydrogen, 350 bar hydrogen with a pretty big electrolyzer. And it was really encouraging working with Greg Barber and and Alex Leonard, who's a real expert in construction. And they have taken over the management of installing the whole site. And so
Less work for Mother.
well, it's their site. They can coordinate it. They'll own the infrastructure after the project is over. So it's quite appropriate that they actually do the installation of the site.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going very well.
So
The
when you
bids-
make hydrogen, say at Nelha, what do you put it in?
Well, we are putting it in hydrogen tube trailers. We purchased 3 of these trailers that carry about equivalent of about 200 gallons of gasoline's worth of hydrogen. And we will use those to transport the hydrogen from Nelha to a dispensing site. The first one will be at the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, where we have 2 hydrogen buses almost ready to go. And we will be installing a dispenser. And they will take hydrogen directly from the tube trailer and do what they say a cascade fill. So we don't need any onboard or on-ground compressor. The gas is already compressed when it gets there. So that takes a lot of infrastructure cost out of it. All you have to do is have your dispenser and your trailer. We'll be hauling the trailer with a large truck, and we would like to be able to use biodiesel in that truck so that, you know, it's like a
Another
totally
customer, Kelly.
renewable operation. So, yeah. And the second dispenser, that's actually going to be at Nelha. And we will be fueling a Helion bus that's under construction with US Hybrid. That's due to be delivered in about 3 or 4 months, which is just about right for when the station cranks up. And that bus will be used in demonstration mode, operated by the Helion bus service. So for example, we would use it potentially as a shuttle bus at the Kona Airport, which is right beside it. The idea is to give the general public the experience of riding in these kinds of vehicles and getting the experience of the hydrogen ride, which is, as you saw in the Mirai, is like a very, very nice ride.
So how do you
But it's always-
incentivize that? I mean, you know, people are not buying enough, in my opinion, electric cars. Hydrogen is even newer, you know, and we call it less popular still, and it's more expensive, as a matter of fact. And this, I don't know, is there an incentive, a federal tax incentive,
Well,
a
there-
state tax incentive?
There are various incentives. There are tax incentives for buying it, but also simple stuff like equating a hydrogen vehicle, which is an electric vehicle, with a battery electric vehicle would go a long way.
So do I get the same benefits in parking on the street at meters and all that stuff?
Well, that's
as I
what we're
did?
asking the legislature to do.
I hope
We've
they do
done this
that for
3
you.
years now.
Really?
We've had a bill up there to equate a hydrogen electric vehicle with a battery electric vehicle. And it gets almost to the end, and then it stalls out.
Well, why don't
And
you
I
talk to them
understand-
right now? That camera
I'm
2
telling
over
you.
there is the legislature. If you just tell them what's on your mind, it might help. Take a
Yeah,
minute.
it's
talk
stalled
to
out
them.
right now.
Yeah.
It's not being heard by some of the committees, and it doesn't cost the state anything to do this. So what is the message that they're sending? They need to send the message that we're involved and we want this to happen. So please, legislators, get this moving. It
Yeah.
doesn't cost you anything. There's no impact on the budget for equating that with an electric vehicle. So therefore, you can use this parking, you can travel in the HOV lane, and get the same benefits as electric vehicle. What they don't want is for that hydrogen vehicle to park in an electric vehicle charging station stall. That would be wrong. They should not
But
do
you
that.
can draft that into a statute. It's
Yeah,
not-
you can
it's
put a
like
little thing on the
distinction.
license plate that says
Yeah.
this is a hydrogen
Simple
vehicle
enough.
car. Thou shalt not park here.
So I know it's more expensive to buy a Mirai than, say, a Nissan Leaf, but query, after you put the investment down for the car, this hydrogen car, you know, cheaper to operate, same to operate, more expensive to operate?
Probably initially more expensive because the hydrogen is more expensive because we don't have volume, the production volume right now to drive these costs down. The technology we're using is still relatively new, so there's
I mean,
no...
to make the hydrogen.
Yeah, to make the hydrogen. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're paying that. So it's early adopters are going to be using it. When you're looking at the bus, however, you only need the one station. And the numbers actually pencil out pretty close to diesel with operating the bus, because you get other advantages. For example, It has regenerative braking, so you save on your brakes, you save on your maintenance. It's that people like it better than a diesel. AC Transit in Oakland, people will wait for the hydrogen bus to come by to take it because they don't want to get
there's
on
no fumes.
a noisy,
I might take
fuming
exception to that comment.
diesel bus. Sorry?
Okay, Kelly, you can have your response now.
Yeah,
I thought
well, no,
yours smelled like popcorn.
It's different types of, I think it's different types of usage and different types of vehicles, but, you know, like, an article just came out a few days ago in Biofuels Digest about biodiesel being the #1 choice of fuel, of alternative fuel for America's trucking fleets. And so there's different, this is one of the things that I've been talking to Stan Osserman and people like that about, is that the industries, the different types of renewable energies have to get together and talk about most appropriate uses. Because if we're all trying to fuel the same thing, like, you know, take the Helion bus. The Helion bus is already on B20 and moving towards B100. If we all focus on that, we're never going to get to 100%. So, you know, we need to talk about what's being done now and what can be done and what most appropriate uses are, so that we're not all trying to do the same.
Well, let me ask you though, big question here is you have hydrogen, you have electric, you have biodiesel, it's all about transportation. At the end of the day, can they coexist? Can they each have an appropriate share or appropriate place in the market? Or should we be looking to see, you know, one prevail over time, say by whatever deadline date there is, whatever, you know, whether it's 2030, 2045, whatever it is.
Here's some numbers. So the state of Hawaii burns about 400 million gallons of jet fuel a year, and that's about a third of the liquid.
And that includes the flights in and out,
That's
everybody.
the flight, well, basically, actually it's the flights out, because the ones coming in hopefully arrive empty. Or,
Thank you for that.
So 400 million gallons a year in jet fuel, and that's about a third of the state's liquid petroleum consumption. Another third goes to electricity generation, and another third goes to ground transportation. So you're talking about 1 billion gallons a year. There's plenty of room. There's plenty of room for all of this. And really, with everything in Hawaii, it's, you know, it's a small state, it's remote, you know, physically separated islands. And so you really need an all of the above approach.
Well, does that give you greater
quote our current
resilience and
sitting president.
sustainability to have a, you know, an all of the above approach? Does that give us, as an isolated island, island state, greater, you know, resilience, greater sustainability in times of duress or bad weather or catastrophe?
Resilience and sustainability are usually a function of how many options you have, just like negotiations. You have a better negotiating position when you've got more options at your, you know, in your back pocket. And so it is possible to have all the above in renewables too. Like, for example, I've talked about renewable jet fuel. The same refinery that makes jet fuel makes about 20% jet fuel, 30% gasoline, you know, 10% diesel. It's just like a regular petroleum refinery. It's just green crude coming in rather than fossil crude. And so it would be possible to have a B20 blend, and the other 80% isn't necessarily fossil fuel. It could be green diesel, as an example.
It's the blending possibility, so you can change the blend. So that brings me to a question we was talking about before the show began. That's all about algae. You know, we had dreams of algae, you know, little algae people all over the place, and we still don't have algae. Where is algae on this continuum?
So algae is, you know, and there's a couple different kinds of algae. So there's macroalgae, kelp. Then there's microalgae, like those of you who are like me and like drinking spirulina, you know, fruit juice. I'm an algae enthusiast. And so if you want to put up a picture, there's actually there's several algae demonstration facilities in the islands. The biggest one is actually on Kawaii.
Why don't we put that picture up now? That'd be the Kawaii picture.
Yeah, so this is the Kawaii Algae Facility. It's actually right by the Lihue Airport, so it's possible for me to fly into Lihue and get a tour and fly out within the same 4-hour period. It's actually that close. It's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And what this is a demonstration facility, so it's actually operating right now under a Department of Energy research grant.
I'm not looking at.
Yeah, it might be, Kelly, since you're on Skype, that you
Okay.
can't see what they're showing on the screen.
Oh, yeah, we'll
They're-
make a word picture for you, Kelly.
Yeah.
It-
And so what it is seated next to actually is Kawaii Island Utility Cooperative's power plant in Lihue. So the idea is that the algae will actually be grown off of the carbon dioxide from the plant. It does actually take a very small slipstream from the plant.
Oh, yeah, what a
It's
great
about, It's
idea.
about 2% because the plant puts out a whole lot of carbon dioxide. So, but this is a demonstration facility. They're trying out different strains. And we grow the algae actually primarily for food. Human nutraceuticals, then it's got great potential for aquaculture and for fish meal, and to actually try and actually have some local production of animal feed.
When
and
you
then the
squeeze
waste,
the
the
algae,
leftover.
when you squeeze the algae to get the lipid oil for the fuel,
Yeah.
you still have the material left, right?
You have a lot of protein.
And you can use that protein for food or other things. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, just like anything in agriculture, you generally don't grow something just for the waste product, and energy is the waste product. Fossil fuels are algae actually, laid down over millions of years. And
So when do you think this is going to materialize? Because everything is moving down its own continuum. Electric cars, hydrogen cars, biofuel. It's all. I wouldn't call it a race. It's not a race because it's like
Jay,
parallel tracks.
Can I speak to this a little bit?
Yeah.
Because we're actually growing algae on site here at Big Island Biodiesel.
Ah, good.
And the original intent of PBARC when they came up with this idea was to do it for biofuels, but the economics still haven't been worked out to extract the oil from algae.
How
and
about
make
the quality?
high enough value to compete with the nutraceuticals that Joelle was talking about, food products like fish meal. And so they've come around. Now we're actually growing it heterotrophically in tanks for fish meal. But the wonderful thing about this model is that we're growing it off of waste papaya. There are 10 to 12 million pounds of waste papaya on the Big Island every year, and these farmers get zero value for that. I don't know how much you know about exported papaya, but it has to be totally green. So one yellow spot on a papaya sends it to the coal pile, which is basically just a big landfill of waste rotting papayas. So PBARC has been working on in the lab at lab scale growing algae off of the waste papaya. The state brought it to us, and this is a state-funded project now. And so we're growing it heterotrophically on site, where the biggest issues with growing algae are contamination. And we think we've gotten that worked out.
What happens when it gets contaminated?
You have to throw the whole tank out or the whole pond out, or however you're growing it. Contamination.
And what can contaminate it?
Anything, a spore of different kind of algae, dirt that gets in there. I mean, there's pretty much anything that it seems weird because you're growing pond scum, but it really can get contaminated quite easily. And
Even pond scum has feelings.
Here, the end game here is for meal for aquaponics, or for aquaculture, for the burgeoning aquaculture industry in the state. And the Agribusiness Development Corporation has been funding this for about a year because they want to see the aquaculture industry take off. So, and I think that's what the folks on Kawaii are looking at too. They're looking at some form of meal for the aquatic industry as well as whatever nutraceutical. But these are the high value products, and when you look at the value of this type of meal, or nutraceuticals especially, the prospect of extracting a gallon of oil out of algae to sell for $3 becomes very unattractive in comparison. And so the state is really focused on the idea of creating, not just for the aquaculture industry, but we're looking at potentially mixing different types of meal from the biofuel crops as well, and coming up with
Well, algae could give you aviation fuel, right? And nothing we talked about today gives you aviation fuel per se, does it?
Well, actually, you need a little bit of all that. So aviation fuel or jet fuel, basically, you still need a hydrocarbon, some kind of hydrocarbon source. So ASTM, American Society for Testing Materials, has actually balloted 2 ways to get a renewable fuel approved through the system. So approved by the FAA, and an entire consortium of customers and rule makers, also approved by the OEM. So Boeing, Rolls-Royce, Pratt and Whitney have all agreed on these ballots.
Do we have a renewable aviation fuel now?
Yeah.
And how,
Yeah, it's what
and how-
Altair's making. It is hydrotreated esters and fatty acids. So it's basically kind of like an upscaled version of biodiesel. You take oils, fats, and greases in, you hydrotreat it to remove the oxygen. That's the distinction between biodiesel and green diesel. Hydrotreat it to remove the oxygen, and what you get out is jet fuel, gasoline, diesel, just like you do out of petroleum.
Can you do that, Kelly?
We can't do that with our current process. I mean, we could do it. We've looked at different technologies to do it. The technology exists, but it's expensive to do, and you have to have large volumes, much larger volumes than what we're doing if you're going to do drop-in fuels. So we actually did apply for one of the drop-in fuel RFPs that came out that I don't think was ever in the end funded. But I don't know if any projects ever actually came out of that. But
The government still wants industry to do this, though.
yeah, I mean, I
The
think
government wants biofuel
but-
for aviation, right?
right, but
And
they
it's
were
not just that.
offering contracts along with that. It was a 50% match, so you had to put 50% of the capital up, and then in the end, you didn't have a contract, so you were just hoping that you were going to be able to do it for less. And really, when we look at the product that we're making, we actually see it as a more valuable product, a higher quality because it's because of the way we treat it, and we're putting it into a market where that's a more expensive type of product.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, Kelly, and Joelle and Mitch, and we're going to come back. We're going to talk about legislation. Okay, so this last break, then we'll come back and we'll see what's cooking in the legislature. Hi, my name is Stan Osserman, and I host the show every Friday here on Think Tech Hawaii called Stan the Energy Man. We talk about everything energy, from anaerobic digesters to batteries to hydrogen fuel cell and grid power. And we do that to keep you informed on the latest technology that's out there and the things that are going on in Hawaii. We broadcast every Friday from noon until 1 o'clock, and I hope you'll tune in. So sometimes we'll be on Think Tech, and sometimes we'll be on Olelo Channel 54, and I'd like you to listen in to me and join me every Friday. We'll see you then. Aloha. Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here in the last leg of the journey about Hawaii, the state of clean energy, with Joelle Simonpietri and Mitch Ewan and Kelly King. And we're talking about legislation now in the 2016 legislature. We're right in the middle of it. Oy, oy, oy. So what's cooking? You guys have interests in anything going on? You must. How about you, Kelly? You always have something going on. What do you got going on this season?
Well, we're still working on that biofuel production tax credit. I think we're starting to feel, I don't know about you, Mitch, but I'm starting to feel like Charlie Brown. You run up to kick the football, and at the last minute, someone pulls it out from under you. Got all the way through the session last year, and it actually passed out of the legislature. And then the Attorney General's office stepped in and said there was something about it that violated the interstate commerce. And so he advised the governor to veto it. So it got vetoed. It's back at the table. It's back again.
Yeah.
And apparently there's a couple of different forms. So we're trying to work with key legislators to make sure that it ends up in the appropriate form. And here the key part too is right now it's a non-refundable, and I think they've gotten it. We've talked to the House Finance Committee and WAM, and the idea of having a non-refundable means that you can only access it against your tax liability. Well, if you're struggling to create a biofuel facility and make biofuels, and you're really not making any money, you have no tax liability, so it doesn't help you. Mm-hmm. So really, the aid comes in the form of a refundable tax credit, where you can get paid based on how much fuel you're producing, and that's more. It's more similar to the tax credits that they gave to wind and solar. The solar. Yeah.
Well, that would be appropriate, wouldn't we? We'd follow the same pattern. What other bills? Anything else you got?
Right. Well, there's also a piece of legislation that would address what we talked about in the beginning of this program, which is that there's nothing in state statute that declares that the state wants to be 100% renewable in transportation. So there is legislation that describes that, and the benchmarks are basically displacing fossil fuel. So they don't describe, what type of how we're going to get there, but it's like, we were talking about earlier.
So do you think if you codified into a statute, maybe a target of 2030, 100% transportation, is that workable? Is it workable without a plan? Does the 2045 non-transportation goal have a plan? I'm not sure I ever heard a plan on that, but hey, everybody seems excited about it. So what do we do about this?
Well, the thing is, it's hard to make a plan without a goal. And so it was very important. Once we set that goal of 100% into state statute, now we're scrambling to get a plan.
Yeah. So the same thing for transportation, right?
Well, first, you're not working toward, you don't know what you're working towards. So the idea of having a plan, a goal of 100% renewables in transportation and benchmarking with displacing fossil fuel and, having lower levels of fossil fuel.
So you're favoring that?
Means is the state would need to come up with a plan to meet those goals.
Yeah, one thing follows the other. So what about you, Mitch?
The state is working on a transportation plan. In fact, they just released an RFP, I think yesterday or the day before, to hire consultants to develop this transportation plan.
This is out of the Energy Office?
Out of the, yes, out of the State Energy Office. So
Yeah.
they're moving towards that. I mean, they already had the study by ICCT, which said these are the buckets that we've got to address and where the fuel is being used, and they came out with several suggestions on how we could do that. So that's being massaged and trying to figure out how we go forward.
Do you think we should pass the bill that calls for, that codifies the 2030 goal, 100% by 2030 in transportation?
It's not 2030, 2045. I don't think.
There's no year?
I think it's
2045.
2045 for
Yeah.
transportation now.
Yeah, it's going to mirror the utility. Well, the way it's written now, it would mirror the utility.
Okay, so the same thing. So
the focus over the past year or two has been on this 100% clean electricity,
Right.
renewable electricity
Right.
by 2045. There's been no change yet to the actual transportation goals. And other than Governor Abercrombie's Hawaii Refinery Task Force, not a whole lot of study in what the system effects are for the state of actually, if you take the electricity market and the liquid fuel for that completely off the table, what that does as far as destabilizing the other parts.
So what's your feeling
the
about
energy
whether
mix.
we should adopt a bill that calls for a specific year goal on 100% transportation?
I think 100% is a bit aggressive. I would settle for something north of 0, because right now, I feel like I have to keep quoting Pretty Woman. Julia, you got to have a goal. Do you have a goal? There isn't a goal.
One of my favorite movies ever.
There is a 20% renewable ground transportation goal in the original Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative, but there's no current plan metrics. And actually, the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum has on their website right now that the state's red as far as progress towards that goal.
Yeah.
Because the actual amount of renewable transportation in the state isn't even visible in the graph.
Close now. We got to close, Mitch. I'll let
Okay.
you
Yeah, you
close.
got a lot of moving parts. Every individual owner of a car and vehicle has an impact on it. While you're talking about utility, you have one. You have a utility company that you can order or put into legislation that you have to do that. But how do you do, 1.5 million people in Hawaii, they like their pickup trucks, they like this, they like that, and legislate them to go on renewable? It's very difficult. And I think it needs a lot more study, and we're very premature. Why make a goal that's unachievable?
Yeah.
I mean, let's get realistic. And once we understand what the realism is, then we can look at making these kinds of
And that seems to be the consensus among the industry.
And I think borrowing from the federal level and international level and having at least voluntary principles is a good start.
We got to go. That's Joelle Simonpietri, Mitch Ewan, and Kelly King talking about taking stock of alternative fuels here on Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. Thank you all very much for participating in ThinkTech and in this program.